There is 1 hour of your day that has the most impact and leverage on the rest of your life than any other hour, and it's literally the hour before you go to bed. This is the hour that most people waste, and it's one of the reasons why most people are mediocre compared to where they could be, because the last hour of your day determines your success the next day. It determines your subconscious. It determines a lot of things. And so in this video, I'm going to share with you a simple 5-minute evening routine that if you apply, it will change your life enormously. It's the most simple, most science-based evening routine you could apply. It's also based on some of the teachings from Dan Sullivan, who is the #1 entrepreneurial coach in the world. He's been coaching high-level successful entrepreneurs for the last 40 years. He came up with a very powerful strategy, and there's an enormous amount of scientific research to prove that it works. So here's the evening routine. At least 30, but maybe 60 minutes before bed, put your phone on airplane mode. You want to put your phone on airplane mode. There's a lot of research that shows that if you look at your phone before bed, it actually disrupts your REM sleep. And there's a lot of research that shows that staring at your phone actually leads to sleep procrastination. Sleep procrastination means you're just scrolling because you're addicted to it, and you're procrastinating going to sleep. And so whatever you do right before you go to bed determines the mindset and the situation of tomorrow. So if you're just being reactive on your cell phone, which is what most people are doing, they're reactively scrolling and just looking, they're reacting to what other people are doing, whether that's reacting to their email, reacting to their news feeds. If you're reactive and distracted and procrastinating as you go to bed, and also as you're destroying your REM, then you're going to be reactive, distracted the next day. There's also a concept in psychology called self-signaling, and that means that every behavior you do signals back to you the kind of person you are. And so if you're always staring at your cell phone, then you're going to want to create more of that same behavior. You're going to want to stare at your cell phone even more, because all behavior is essentially addictive. And so if you're staring reactively at your phone right before bed, you're going to start the next day the same way, which is what the research shows. Most people, they're looking at their phone even while in bed before they get out of bed. Also, research shows that it takes most people at least 24 minutes to get out of bed after their first alarm. So that's pretty bad. So here's what you want to do instead. Don't be reactive. Don't be distracted. Don't stare at your phone like 98% of people do, which destroys their REM sleep. Instead, put your phone away. And now here's the 5-minute routine. Pull out your journal and write down 3 wins that you had for the last day, for that day. So there's at the end of your day, write down 3 wins you had. Now, this is different than writing 3 things you're grateful for. There's a lot of research that shows that writing 3 things you're grateful for from that day enhances your gratitude. And there's a lot of research specifically that shows by writing 3 things at the end of your day that you're grateful for, not only does your happiness and your well-being increase, but also your sleep improves. A lot of research shows that gratitude at the end of your day literally improves your sleep, creates more REM sleep, creates more restfulness, because gratitude in general makes you feel better. So instead of writing down 3 things you're grateful for, and this is something that Dan Sullivan has found, write 3 specific wins for the day. Wins means forms of progress, things you did well, or things that you learned, or things that advanced you. Write down 3 wins. Now, the reason 3 wins is more powerful than just writing 3 things you're grateful for is because by writing 3 wins, but also by feeling grateful for those wins, not only do you increase your gratitude, but you also increase your confidence, because confidence is the byproduct of performance. And so by looking back and by framing various experiences as wins, by just finding or defining out 3 wins from your day, not only are you increasing your gratitude, but you're also increasing your confidence. So basically, all you gotta do is pull out your journal and write down 3 wins that you had for that day, but also then write down the 3 most important wins you can get tomorrow. Why this is so powerful and important is because then it gets you thinking proactively about what are the most important things you can accomplish the next day. You want no more than 3. Most people, they have a to-do list of like 10 items. If you have more than 3 items on your to-do list, you're not focused on productivity, you're actually just focused on being busy. No more than 3. Jim Collins said if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. And so no more than 3 items on your to-do list. These are things that are important, not urgent. These are things that are future self-oriented behaviors. These are things that you could easily procrastinate and put off. So there's like working on that book or that screenplay or building that business or having some one-on-one time with your kids. These are 3 important things that are relevant to your future self. They're not relevant to your current situation, or they're not things that are just based on busyness. They're things that are based on true importance. So that's all you really have to do. Honestly, pull out your journal, write down the 3 biggest wins for that day, and then what are the 3 most important wins you can have for tomorrow. Then you just close your journal. That's it. And you do this every single day. There's one other thing you can add to this, and this helps you actually increase your motivation and accountability even more. After you've actually opened up your journal and just wrote down your 3 wins for the day and your 3 wins for tomorrow, you could actually text that to a success or an accountability partner. Text your 3 wins for tomorrow to your accountability partner. I actually have an accountability partner and an assistant that I share my 3 wins with every single day. My assistant always texts me and she says, what are your big 3 for tomorrow? Your 3 wins for tomorrow. And so this helps you in so many ways. First off, it feels like you're always winning. That's one of the things that Dan Sullivan has found is that when you have 3 wins that you're always seeing every single day, you always feel like you're winning. And if you always feel like you're winning, you always feel like you're moving forward. But secondly, if you're clear on your big 3 for the next day, then you can wake up tomorrow with a purpose. First off, you go to bed with gratitude. It increases your sleep. But when you wake up, you already know what you're going to do. And that's a really important aspect of having in a morning routine is you want to know what you're going to do when you wake up. And that eliminates decision fatigue. Decision fatigue is where you're in a situation where you don't know what you're going to do. For example, you're at like a party and you're trying to be on a diet and they're offering all sorts of desserts. Decision fatigue happens when you don't actually know what you're going to do. If you don't know what you're going to do in a given situation, then that burns out your willpower because you're kind of caught between multiple options. And ultimately what usually happens is you cave to the most easy or default option, which in most cases is the path of least resistance, which in most cases is the poor behavior, which ultimately destroys your confidence. So if you're in a situation, for example, and you're on a diet, but you don't know actually what you're going to do, more often than not, you will cave to, the sugary sweets or whatnot. That same principle applies to a morning routine. When your alarm clock goes off in the morning, the reason why on average in America, people spend 24 minutes in bed after their alarm goes off is because of decision fatigue. They didn't have a game plan that they were excited for when they woke up. Instead, they went to bed reactively and they're waking up reactively. If you don't know what you're going to do when your alarm goes off, you're going to deal with decision fatigue. Do I get up? Do I not get up? Well, I don't know what I would get up for. And then you have to start making decisions, and making decisions is costly. But also, if you don't know what you're going to do, you're probably just going to cave to the snooze button. But if you have your big 3 set out, then you don't need to deal with decision fatigue because you already made a decision the night before. Michael Jordan actually said, once I made a decision, I never thought about it again. Not only do you want to make a decision, but you can also design for that situation. Environment design. So you could put your alarm clock across the room. You could have your journal wide open right next to your alarm clock with your big 3 so that as soon as you get there, you wake it up and you go. You could have your clothes laid out. You could make it so easy for yourself that you just get up and you get going. That is the evening routine that actually, if you apply consistently, not only will you build your confidence and your gratitude, you'll sleep better, but also you'll wake up with more purpose. And because you're focused on winning and because you're focused on your 3 big wins, you're going to start creating more wins. You're going to start wanting more wins. You're going to start using your time more productively and more prolifically. And because you're in a state of winning and focusing on the important versus the urgent, the quality of your wins will increasingly go up. Rather than just being busy and doing 10 different things, you're going to focus more and more on high quality. That's actually one of the things that Joshua Waitzkin, the author of The Art of Learning, talks about, is making quality a way of life. And so how you spend that last hour of your day in a lot of ways determines your sleep. It determines the quality of your next day. It determines the focus of your next day. But if you can use that last hour really well, and if you can get better and better at framing each day as a win, clarifying wins, but then also specifying the best kinds of wins for the next day, the best 3 wins, and then using accountability to report those wins, then you're tapping into Parkinson's law. You're focusing on wins, you're creating wins, and the quality of your days increases, the quality of your time increases, the quality of your sleep increases, the quality of everything increases. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so that last hour of your day is your highest leverage hour. It determines how you sleep. It determines the success of your next day. So my question for you is, how are you using the last hour of your day? Are you using it to frame yourself in the win and to frame your day as a win and also to set yourself up for the success the next day? Or are you just wasting it? Most people waste it. Most people, they consume a lot of junk media, junk food, and just procrastinate sleep. And then their sleep stinks. Their next day is non-fruitful, non-eventful. They're just going through the motion in survival mode. So that is how you apply a powerful evening routine. So simple, so science-based, and if you do it, the quality of your days will continuously improve. The quality of your wins will improve. The quality of your deep work will improve. The quality of your future self will improve. And of course, what you do the night before sets that up. And so the evening routine is very important. And the most important aspects of an evening routine is to actually begin to unwind and begin to recover. There's a lot of psychological research on a concept called psychological detachment from work. It's key to actually let your brain recover, to turn off, to slow down, rather than to constantly be consuming, constantly be reacting. As a whole, because our willpower is very low at the end of the day, because we've generally exhausted our energy, most people consume, whether it's junk food or whether it's just more media. In fact, research shows that 90% of people procrastinate sleep so that they can scroll a few more times. Jerry Seinfeld, the famous comedian, actually had a funny skit about this. He said that night guy always screws morning guy because night guy wants to stay up. And so he stays up late and ultimately doesn't care that he's setting up morning guy for failure. And that's often what we do, is we procrastinate sleep to continue consuming a little bit more. And then we go to bed, and basically the thoughts you had
right when you went to bed influence the thoughts you have right when you wake up. And so rather than continually consuming, go to bed at 1 hour earlier than you normally do, put your phone on airplane mode an hour before you go to bed, take a little time for reflection and journaling, reflecting on the wins you had that day. But also, I love what Henry Eyring recommends. He recommends while you're journaling at night, you just take 5 minutes in your journal. It's nothing crazy, but you journal about where you saw God's hand in your life. So you could reflect on this a few different ways. There's a lot of research that shows just writing down 3 things you're grateful for from that day boosts your happiness, but also improves the quality of your sleep and your physical health. So you could write down 3 things you're grateful for. You could also write down 3 wins you had that day, which is a similar version. You're grateful for the progress you made. Even if you didn't make the core progress that you wanted, you can look back and you can say, what are 3 forms of progress I made? Dan Sullivan and I actually talk about this in The Gap and the Gain, that just by writing down 3 wins you had that day, you've framed the day, you've contextualized it as a win. One of the reasons this is so important is that it's important to realize that your present is what determines the meaning of the past. You're the one who contextualizes your past. You're the one who contextualizes the story of your day and the story of your life. Brent Slife, actually, he's an amazing psychologist. He wrote a book called Time and Psychological Explanation. And he talks about how it's more accurate to say that the present causes the meaning of the past than to say that the past causes the meaning of the present. It's not the past that's driving your life. It's actually the present that's determining what your past means. And as you become more aware, as you become more conscious, you get to determine and contextualize your past however you want. So looking at the past and framing it in a positive on a daily basis and saying, what were 3 forms of progress I made? What were 3 good things that happened? Even if the day went to crap, some days it does, but you can still find 3 wins, 3 ways in which you're better now because of what happened. And then using Henry Eyring, if you want, and you can use any of these variations. You can just write down what you're grateful for. You can write down 3 wins, or you can write down 3 ways in which you saw God's hand in your life. Either way, you're training your brain to focus on the right things. And whatever you focus on, you create more of. Whatever you focus on expands. Psychologists call this selective attention. As William James said, and he was the father of American psychology, he said there's millions of items in the outward order. What he means by that is the outside world. There's millions of things going on outside of me which never actually reach my experience. My experience is what I choose to attend to. And so you train your brain what to focus on. And you can do that at the end of the day by just simply being grateful, focusing on wins, or even if you choose, trying to see where God's hand was in your life. I've done that, even the third one, where I look for, at the end of the day, where did I see God's hand in my life? And I actually start to find it. You find what you're looking for. And then you train your brain what to accomplish. One other just aspect of this evening journaling, which I don't think needs to take more than 5 minutes, is just simply commit to what you're going to do tomorrow. Commit to who you're going to be. Write down 1 to 3 key objectives for the next day. As Jim Collins said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. And applying the 80-20 principle, if you have 10 items on your to-do list, 8 of those are probably irrelevant. 80% of your results comes from just 20% of what you do. So if you have 10 items on your to-do list, actually isolate. What are the 1 or 2 of these that if I accomplish at a high level, will actually make all of the rest irrelevant? According to constraint theory, there's a bottleneck. The bottleneck is the singularity. It's the one thing that if you put way more energy and attention to, you'd get way bigger results. I also like what Tim Ferriss talks about in the 4-Hour Workweek, that usually people spend very spread focus. They maybe try to accomplish 10 things in one day and they put 30 minutes or really distracted focus on all of them. And you'd be much better if you actually just had 3 or 4 hour blocks just to accomplish one thing, whether it's to write that chapter of the book, focus on that business idea, do that research, pitch ideas, whatever it is, just to actually try to do one thing really well. That's what deep work is. That's what deliberate practice is. That's how you become so good you can't be ignored. So you go to bed with a plan. You've also framed out your day so that you're going to sleep better. You've trained your brain what to focus on. You then go to bed with a plan and then you wake up. One of the questions I'm regularly asked is, what are the key routines to put into place if you want to continuously upgrade your life? So the first one, I think, and this one's not that complicated actually, but very few people actually do it. And even sometimes I go like days, weeks without doing it. And then I'll sit and just do it once and immediately I will see the benefits. And that's taking 5 minutes at night to journal. So in the book, The Gap and the Gain, Dan and I have a full chapter on this. At the end of your day, rather than scrolling through social media, it is so beautiful to put your phone on airplane mode, pull out your journal, and just journal for 5 minutes. And there's really only a few things that you need to do in this journaling session. You write down all of the things that are positives from that day. You write down the actual events that occurred. I literally list them as bullets. I go for writing 3 wins being 3 things that I either learned, experienced, or made progress towards my goals on. Just 3 wins from the day. Yesterday, as an example, I wrote down, that me and my 2 oldest kids spent some time together. We went and did like a more spiritual event together. We also went and got some ice cream together. I mean, you just literally make a list of the things that happened that day and the positive outcome you got out of that. Even if, for example, things fell apart and you didn't get what you wanted, you could still write down what you learned from that. And so that would be a win. Maybe just spend the first half of this 5-minute session just writing down the things that happened that day in bullet fashion, and also write down why those are wins, or just writing them down is enough, honestly. The second thing you do is just write down the 3 things that are the most important that you could accomplish the next day. The reason this is really helpful is because at the end of your day, your brain is a lot more analytical. Your journaling in the morning is going to be very different. I would say your journaling in the morning is a lot more creative, whereas your journaling in the evening is a lot more contemplative, analytical. But you can also do some good planning at night just by writing down the 3 most important things. And it's actually really beneficial to do that right after you've just written down your wins from the day. First off, this quantifies your past. It makes your day more concrete. A lot of people, if I were to ask you, for example, what happened yesterday, you might not say that many things. In other words, the past is a blur. The day is a blur. How was your day? It was okay. But when you actually get specific and concrete and list the things that did happen, now you've actually given it structure, form, narrative. Now you've actually given it an arc, and you've clarified it, you've defined it. And that actually immediately swings to a more defined tomorrow. You're getting better at crystallizing, defining your past, and crystallizing and defining your future. It allows you to become more specific and measurable, which allows you to be a lot more intentional, a lot more intelligent. Actually, Aristotle talks about final cause, and that everything that humans do is toward an end. The more specific and measurable you get towards the ends you want, the more actually intentional your behavior can be. The more intelligent you become, the more intentional you are about what you do, the more you're less reactive. So this first one is really big. And I could not stress this more. I really encourage you to do it, to try it. Just spend 5 minutes at night journaling. Spend the first half of those 5 minutes just writing down the things that happened that day. They could be in seriously bullets, and the positives that happened, the things you learned, the progress you made, the small wins you got. Just write those down, and then write down the 3 most important wins you could get the next day. This practice alone would allow you to have a bigger future and a better past. The better past is by quantifying the past, by measuring each day as a gain, by measuring each day as a win, and just by putting some concrete terms around your past so that your past actually has some structure and form. And then just simply the night before, clarifying the 3 most important wins. These are important, not urgent. Urgent are like the meetings you have, getting to work, blah, blah, blah. Like that's not stuff you'd put on your list. You'd put down 3 important things that won't get done unless you're intentional about it, that won't get done unless you make the time, because if you don't make the time or create that time, and by the way, time does come from you. That's something that I love from the book, The Big Leap from Gay Hendricks. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this as well. The difference between Einstein time versus Newtonian time. Newtonian time is like viewing everything as cause and effect, that time is actually outside of you, whereas more of an Einstein perspective of time, more of that quantum physics, is viewing yourself as the cause of all effects outside of you, and that time itself is something that you create. It's your choice what you do with your time. If you feel like time is outside of you and you have that more Newtonian perspective, then you always feel a scarcity of time. You always feel like you don't have a lot of it. You don't know where all that time goes. Whereas if you embrace this more ownership of time, that time comes from you, then you can create as much time freedom as you want. You can really slow time down. That's also how you create massive progress. From an Einstein perspective, a time relativity perspective, the faster you travel through space, the slower time goes. So it's not about working harder. It's not even about working faster. It's about making distance. It's about distance covered. And often you actually have to slow things down in order to actually make progress. A lot of people, they're racing, but they're kind of on a hamster wheel. And so it does not matter how much effort or energy you put in if you're not making any tangible distance towards your desired future self. then time is speeding up for you. If you really slow down, you can find a quick little wormhole or a slipstream. You can find a path, a relationship, a leverage point where you can make 10x, 20x, 100x the distance in very little effort, very little time. And so that's one way of slowing time down dramatically. Just recognizing time comes from you. Today, how you live your life, the level of freedom and choice you have towards time is you. And once you start taking responsibility of your time, once you start taking responsibility of today, you can then start creating the results, the outcomes you want. It's quite beautiful. So that's routine number one. It's something that I would say is, I would argue this is even more important than morning journaling, is just taking those 5 minutes to list out your wins and then to decide and define your 3 for the next day. That allows you to go to bed. It allows you to allow your subconscious to work on it while you're asleep. There's that great quote from Thomas Edison, never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. By simply writing down the 3 things you want to accomplish the next day, those important things, you've already now taken ownership of your time for tomorrow. You can also visualize yourself through the process, but also the completion, and visualizing your future self right before going to bed. And then while you're asleep, your subconscious ultimately creates that reality. I love what Dr. Wayne Dyer said. He said, all of your life is based on what you think about. And becoming intentional and knowing that what you want is already yours is about turning your thoughts into the physical equivalent, turning your thoughts into physical form, whatever that is. If you want to start a business, if you want to see yourself in really healthy shape, if you want to see yourself in a loving relationship, if you want to see yourself in a certain position, if you want to see yourself in a certain destination, all you have to do is turn those thoughts into physical form. And what Wayne Dyer says is that it's really about having a willingness to do so. Are you willing to do what is required to get that? If you're willing, then you can have it. You can turn your thoughts into physical form. It's beautiful. There's a few great books on that subject just for reference. Obviously, everything Wayne Dyer has written. I love his book, The Power of Intention, the book As a Man Thinketh from James Allen, Think and Grow Rich as another great one. Anything from Neville Goddard is very good. So the second routine is another form of journaling, and that's morning journaling pre-input. You could obviously listen to some audiobook, some music, a podcast, but this is entertainment, I guess you could say. The difference between education and entertainment, unhealthy or reactive consumption. This is what is written about in The Artist's Way, about just writing down 3 pages. This is what would be considered spiritual windshield wipers, where you're just clearing the fog. Wake up and just write down really subconsciously what's going on in your life. You could write down what happened yesterday. You could write down what you're dealing with. You could write down what you're thinking about. For example, I recently had an argument with my daughter. And so I would write that down. And interestingly, just by getting it on paper, you can start to get it outside of yourself and you can start to digest it in different forms. Again, the spiritual windshield wipers. If you don't just get it down and just get it out, then it's actually impacting you subconsciously. And so just simply by writing down in your journal a few pages in the morning, getting some initial thoughts out, but then I think directing your thoughts towards the day, towards your commitments, towards your future self, towards maybe your 3-month goals, your 6-month goals, your 12-month goals, your 5-year goals, taking time to get the subconscious just kind of blah out of your system, but then getting to the point where you start to clarify your future self, maybe clarifying what would be the most important thing you could do today, clarifying who you could reach out to, thinking about people you could love, think about people you could support. It's just this is more of a creative rather than a reflective time. The evening 5-minute journaling is more of a reflection, but also a little bit of planning. This is more of a creation / clearing and creating session. And what I have found in this routine or in this journaling session is that I get insane levels of inspiration. It could be on ideas that I'm trying to figure out that I then would teach to others. It could be something that someone I want to reach out to, or something I could do. It could be anything, but I've found that taking this time to journal in the morning is where most of my creative inspiration, most of my visual inspiration, most of just the tactical inspiration, like reach out to this person, send that text, write that note. A lot of these ideas come simply by giving yourself the space. And you could do a little bit of premeditation before you do this activity. You could also pray, if that's something you do, is pray for inspiration, pray for the spirit, the guidance, whatever you want to do, meditate before. I actually have a pre-journaling routine as well. On the front cover of my journals, I have 5 questions. And these are kind of a pre-framing activity. Actually, Dr. Robert Cialdini wrote a book called Persuasion, and he talks about how when you see something and that influences what you see next. And so if, for example, you're told that someone's rude and then you meet them, that's going to frame how you look at them and how you see them. So how you first experience something is influenced by what you first saw. And so I actually apply that in my journal. I have 5 questions that I look at. One is, where am I right now? And I just have a bullet point list of where my life is at right now, what I'm working on, what I'm up to. Then I have a question that says, what are my wins from the last 90 days? And this just, again, allows me to quantify my past. It allows me to look back and say, what are the biggest forms of progress I've made in the last 90 days? The third question is, what are the most important wins for the next 90 days? These are just some bullets. As an example, near complete with the book 10x is easier than 2x, the book I'm currently writing. Get on to 15 really great podcasts for my next book launch, Be Your Future Self Now. Get my next book collaboration in place, find new income streams, spend time with my kids. I mean, I didn't fully list them, but just clarifying some wins. Then I have, where do I see my future self in 12 months from now? And I just have the 3 biggest outcomes of where I want to see my future self, or where I do see my future self. And then I've got 36 months. Where's my future self 3 years from now? And again, 3 biggest outcomes. So those clarifying questions, I just can look at those, review them, and that kind of pre-frames me for a great journaling session. It's just a beautiful experience. Those are, I would say, probably the 2 most fundamental. I think other routines would be to spend a lot of time reading or learning. I find that when I'm reading and consuming high quality stuff, it influences everything else I'm doing. When I'm just consuming like random media, whether that's social media, whether that's YouTube videos, whether that's like talk radio, whether that's news, whether that's just kind of more urgent, more low level information, it bleeds over into everything I'm doing. My creativity plummets. Again, garbage in, garbage out. Your input shapes your outlook. I'm just less clear. I'm less intentional because I'm not learning, because I'm not digesting, my brain's kind of decaying. And so I think if you're constantly consuming high quality information, that's really brilliant. So I would say that those are probably the 3. Obviously, exercise, eating better. I love this quote from James Allen. He said that when you make your mind pure, or when you make your thoughts pure, you'll no longer desire impure food. Like, you'll no longer want to consume junk because you will have a different identity. You will stop seeing yourself as the kind of person who consumes that kind of junk food. I also like the thought that comes from Wayne Dyer, where he talks about basically the idea that like the person you see yourself in on the inside is basically what's creating the manifestation of what's on the outside. So if like you see yourself as someone who's tired or someone who's old, what that means is that you have an old person living in your body, and of course your body is going to follow suit. If you see yourself as someone who's tired or someone who's stressed or someone who's frustrated, however you see yourself, that's basically the spirit or the soul or the thing on the inside that's ultimately going to create your physical body and ultimately going to create your life. And so much better to actually see yourself as young, vibrant. And by young, that's just a way of looking at it. You could say you see yourself as healthy, energetic, vibrant, learning, loving. Like, what's the kind of person on the inside of your body, which is going to become manifested outside of your body? I think that those are some great concepts. And those are some routines that I believe if you applied more, you'd be a lot more intelligent, a lot more intentional. You'd sleep better. You'd have better health. You'd have better input. You'd have clear goals. You'd have clear steps. You would own your time a lot more.
In the book, The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg talks about how keystone habits are a single thing you do that ultimately ripples into the other areas of your life. If you can master a simple keystone habit, then it will transform your whole life. And so I'm going to share with you a 5-minute evening routine that if you apply, it will change the rest of your life. Before you even engage in this 5-minute routine, please put your phone on airplane mode at least 30 minutes before bed. Get away from technology, allow your brain to slow down, allow yourself to recover. The technology obviously keeps your brain into a high beta state where it's just constantly switching things. You want to zone down, be alive in your environment. So here's the 5-minute routine. First off, pull out your journal. There's a lot of research that shows that writing things down really internalizes them. Write down 3 things that you're grateful for from that day. A lot of research shows that gratitude improves your emotions, it calms you down, it brings peace, it brings joy. So first off, just write 3 things you're grateful for. There's a lot of research that shows that first off, that trains your brain to see the good. It helps you to see more and more good. It also helps you to want more good in your life. It also helps you get into a state where you're ready for rest. You will sleep better if you do gratitude at the end of your day. So That should take you a minute or two max. Just write down 3 things you're grateful for from that day. You could also just write down 3 things that you accomplished that make you feel like you're making progress. Whatever you want, 3 things you're grateful for or 3 forms of progress. The next thing you do is write down the 3 things you want to accomplish the next day. Have no more than 3. As Jim Collins said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. Write down 3 things you want to accomplish. It should take you seriously a minute. Just give yourself the minute to just think, what are the 3 most important things that if I accomplish tomorrow will be a great day, regardless of anything else happens? These should be things that are important, not urgent. So for example, writing 500 words on that book you're writing, or reaching out to that mentor. Just write 3 outcomes. Focus on outcome more than process. The process is what you do on a daily basis, but when you're thinking about goals, you want to think, what are the 3 outcomes that if I accomplish, it's going to be an amazing day? Then give yourself a minute or two just to write about anything that immediately comes to mind. Free flowing. For example, last night I did this, and a few thoughts came to my mind about what I needed to work on or talk about with my assistant. And so just give yourself a free flow thing. This is a 5-minute journal routine, but there's one other element that I want to give you that's very powerful. So the 5-minute routine is just write down 3 things you're grateful for, 3 wins you had. Write down the 3 things you want to accomplish the next day. Also just give yourself a minute or two just to write any free-flowing thoughts. As you express gratitude and as you write down the 3 things you want to accomplish tomorrow, you're going to get your brain going in a positive way. Also, it's more of an alpha slow brain rather than, the reactive brain that you have on your phone. This is a meditative, creative flow, and you're going to actually tap into some insights where maybe you'll get an insight for what you need to work on or what you want to accomplish tomorrow. The final stage of this is to have an accountability partner and to text them your big 3 for tomorrow. I have an accountability partner. We've been doing this for years, and it's the simplest, easiest way to get into flow. One of the best flow triggers is to have immediate feedback. And so you want to actually share progress on your goals on a daily basis with an accountability partner, someone you value. So at the end of the day, you actually would report your 3 for the day, and you would also share your 3 for the next day. So every day, I send just one text to my accountability partner. And this text is at the end of the day. Here's how I did on the 3 that I wanted to accomplish today. And here's the 3 that I'm going to accomplish tomorrow. So I give a number. It's like 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. And then here are my 3 for tomorrow. That's it. And then he shares his with me. This makes your internal focus into something external, where you're turning not only something you're measuring into a system, you're turning it into a system with accountability. That's all. That is the only thing you need to do. Then just let it go. Go to bed, enjoy yourself, wake up, and then just jump straight into the 3. Or straight into journaling, gratitude, and then jumping into the 3 things you want to accomplish. And then at the end of your day, do it again. This creates a cycle that creates an intense level of confidence over time. You wake up, you have a purpose, you've woken up with a purpose. One of the reasons why people struggle to wake up in the morning or they jump straight into reactivity is because they didn't set themselves up with a plan. You never want to start a day unless it's finished first on paper, and obviously you want to finish it first on paper the night before, not the morning of. And it literally should take just a few minutes. What are the big 3 for that day? Nothing else. The urgencies will take care of themselves. What you want to focus on is what's important. You want to focus on your future self, not so much the demands of your current self. If you're always focused on the urgencies and the current situation at hand, you're never going to make powerful advancements in your life. But if you're living your life based on the conditions and the circumstances of your desired future self, which is the 3 things you want to accomplish that day, if you become outcome focused over process focused, the process is something that should adapt. The process comes from your goals. So if you focus on 3 core outcomes you want to accomplish each day, 1 to 3 major outcomes, and then you knock those out very early in the morning in a high flow state, meaning you hyper concentrate, you remove distractions, you keep your phone on airplane mode, you do it hopefully before 8 a.m., depending on your schedule, you just knock it out, and then you feel great about yourself. This is an amazing way to build confidence. And then at the end of your day, you get to reflect back and say how you did, and you get to report that progress to an accountability partner. There's a concept called Pearson's Law. Pearson's Law says that when performance is measured, performance improves. But when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates exponentially. So this really shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Literally at the end of your day, 5 minutes. Write down 3 things you're grateful for, or 3 wins you've gotten, because you want to frame your day as a win. Second, what are the big 3 that you want to accomplish the next day? Also give yourself just a little bit of space in your journal to just write any organic, free-flowing thoughts that come. Some thoughts will come. And then text your accountability partner or send them a message or an email sharing how you did on your big 3 that day. 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3. And then share with them your big 3 in bullet points for tomorrow. Then the next day, you just do that same thing. Give yourself a little space in your journal. Express gratitude, that codes your day as a win, share your wins, and then text your accountability partner. So that then the next day, you can wake up with a purpose. And when you wake up with a purpose, you're going to start to get to the point where you wake up organically. You wake up with energy because you already know what you're going to do. One of the big reasons why people have a hard time waking up in the morning is because they don't know what they want to do. And that then creates a friction where you have to use your willpower. If you don't know what you want to do in a given situation, then that creates what's called decision fatigue. You're torn between options, or you don't even know what you want to do. And then you're in a state of decision fatigue where you have to make a decision. You don't want to put yourself in that position when you first wake up. When you first wake up, you don't want to ask yourself, what do I want to do? Then you have to make a decision out of a multitude of options while you're tired, laying in bed, and you might as well just hit the snooze button and go back to bed. Whereas if you've already defined the decision beforehand, you've written out your big three, so that when you wake up, you've got your journal on a counter somewhere, and it's open, and you've got your big three that you've written down. You already know what you want to do. You can wake up with a purpose. The decision was made last night, so you don't have to make the decision right now. There's a great quote from Michael Jordan. He said, once I made a decision, I never thought about it again. The way to alleviate decision fatigue is to make a decision. You make a decision by ultimately deciding what you're going to do and then following through. And then if you wake up with that purpose, get straight moving, you're going to learn to train your brain to wake up and operate much faster. Then you can pull out your journal, write some gratitude for the day, boost your focus, boost your flow, boost your abundance for the day, and then maybe spend 5 minutes in your journal just reflecting on your big three, refining what you're going to do, committing to what you're going to do, and then jumping into your big three, whatever those are. Eat the frog, as they would say. Do the worst thing first. Do the most challenging thing first in a state of deep flow. No distractions, keep your phone on airplane mode until you're done with these at least 60 to 90 minutes of flow-based concentration. And then by having knocked out a few of these things, you build confidence, because confidence is basically a measure of self-trust. And by regularly waking up first thing in the morning, putting first things first, putting the important before the urgent, you're putting your future self before your current demands, you're building increasing confidence that you can create the life you want. Confidence is based on prior performance, recent prior performance. And so if you continually wake up, do what you want to do, put first things first, have flow, have focus, have concentration, and you actually do what you said you were going to do the night before, including when you waking up when you wanted to wake up, then you've got extreme confidence that ripples into the rest of your day. And then you can get to the point where your view of your future self and your measurement for how you measure your life and your time starts to increase. And then you can start saying no to lesser and lesser things. Dan Sullivan, the co-founder of Strategic Coach, has a concept called always be the buyer. Always be the buyer means that you're the one who can reject. If you're the seller, then that means you're trying to sell something and the buyer can reject you. If you're out trying to sell a product, you can get rejected by someone who's buying it. But if you're the buyer in life, then you can say no to more and more things. And Dan would argue that you're at a place in your life because of what you've rejected in the past. You rejected various relationships, opportunities, situations, ideas. Maybe you rejected the idea of having to work in a desk at a certain location at certain times. Or maybe you rejected various relationships or behaviors or addictions. Whatever you rejected, those levels of rejections allowed you to get to a certain place. You are whatever you say yes to. And hopefully right now you say no to things that your former self said yes to. And so what this process does on a regular basis, where you're focused on gratitude, you're focused on your wins, you're getting more and more intentional with your day, with your time, and then you're waking up and you're using your morning hours not only to be clear, but to take action towards your future self, your level of vision for yourself increases. And then you can be a buyer at a higher and higher level. You can start saying no to more and more things, whether it be things that you spend your time on, things you put in your body, level of information you consume. Maybe you consume too much junk information, too much scrolling, too much low quality stuff. And so you can say no to more and more things so that you can be the buyer of better and better things. Again, you are whatever you say yes to. And so the goal is to say yes to higher and higher quality things. And that's a reflection of your confidence. And that comes from watching yourself take action, watching yourself win, making progress, building momentum towards those things that matter to you. So again, the 5-minute routine is simple. First off, turn your phone on airplane mode so that you've actually got some space to meditate. But the 5-minute routine is really just in your journal. Write down 3 things you're grateful for that day, or 3 wins you had that day. Then write down the 3 wins you want to get the next day. Give yourself a minute or two to just write any random thoughts that pop into your mind, because some might pop in your mind due to the gratitude or due to the planning. And then shoot a text to an accountability partner with how you did on your big 3 that day and what your big 3 are for the next day. That's it. Then wake up with a purpose and get after it. And then at the end of the day, report it. The reason why you want daily reporting is because immediate feedback is a flow trigger. And so getting immediate feedback on your progress, it creates accountability, it creates flow. You want to be reporting your progress to someone that matters to you frequently. It's just like, for example, as a writer, if I don't get immediate feedback on my writing, then I'm not going to be in flow. So I need to write a draft, send it to an editor, or write a blog post, publish it so that it's public, so that it can start getting feedback. You want to have feedback in your life so that it kind of keeps that edge going. Either you control your phone or your phone controls you. There's one behavior that if you apply will change everything in your life. It's when you're done with work, turn your phone on airplane mode and you let it go. You stop needing to input so much. You turn off your phone, you leave it away from your body, and you be present with people in your life that matter to you. If you have kids or a spouse or friends or a roommate, you get used to being in the world. We live in a technological world where most of our work is staring in front of a screen these days. We spend so much time plugged in that we don't plug out. And there's a lot of research in the field of what's called occupational psychology. And what that field has found is a concept called psychological detachment from work. We now live in a world because of email and texting where we're always kind of plugged in, but we're never fully engaged with where we are. When you're at work, you're thinking about home, or you're thinking about YouTube, you're thinking about all sorts of things, and you're never fully in flow. And then when you're at home, you're never fully engaged either. You might be staring at your phone, thinking about this, thinking about that. Our minds have become ping pong balls bounced by every single outside thing or notification. The simple key is that how you do anything is how you do everything, and you want to start with the highest leverage outcome, which is engagement at home. Recovery and flow and engagement when you're not working actually will create far more flow and engagement while you're working. That's what the research has shown. If you do not fully detach from work, meaning you remove the technology, remove the mindsets, remove the notifications, remove the thoughts, and just fully disengage, and then go into a form of active recovery. Staring at your phone and just watching TV is not quality recovery. Engaging with family and friends, exercising, doing a hobby, relaxing, journaling, doing other forms of stimulating, mindful, joyful activities without needing your phone constantly ringing at your side. Actually turning it off, being comfortable with it off for hours at a time, leaving it away from your body so that it's not a distraction. It's actually out of your body, out of sight, out of mind. It's no longer a default subconscious thing where you keep grabbing it, but it's out of sight, out of mind. And because it's not around you, you won't be tempted as much. It's just like food in your house. If you don't have refined sugar or cookies or things like that in your house, you're not going to think about it as much. If it's sitting right in front of you, if it's right next to you, you will grab it. And so not only do you need to give yourself the permission to put it on airplane mode, but you need to give yourself the permission to leave it away from your body. When I pull up at home, I work from about 5 or 6 in the morning until about 2 or 3. And within that's a workout. But when I go home, I have 6 kids. And I'm not perfect at this, but I'm getting better at just having a detachment routine where I create the 3 outcomes I want the next day. I write down, here are the 3 things I want to do tomorrow. And then I turn off my phone and I leave it in my car until my kids are asleep. On the days that I do that, I am in so much flow and enjoyment and presence in the real world that because of that, I'm actually actively recovering. My mind is becoming more clear. And if you do this, your mind will become more clear. You'll be more present. You'll be less of a ping pong ball. And again, as the research shows, if you can fully detach from work, you will be able to fully engage while you're at work. Your body needs rest and so does your mind. And if you can fast from technology, if you can fast, intermittent fast, however you want to define it, from work, from tech, from ping pong balls, and just be present, then while you're in it, you're going to be so much more intentional. You're going to have so much more control over it. It's not going to control you. And you're going to have a lot more flow. There's a great quote, wherever you are, that's where you should be. If you have a high quality life outside of work, then you'll have a high quality life at work. If you can learn to control your technology, you can learn to control your mind. If you can learn to control your mind, you can learn to control your body. If you can learn to control your body, you can start to control everything. You can start to control your eating. You can start to control your behavior. You can start to control the connections you have with other people. You can start creating the outcomes that you want in your life. You can start to become a lot more powerful. And it all starts with a simple keystone habit. A keystone in an arch is the centerpiece that holds the whole arch together. And a keystone habit is one behavior that ripples out into all the areas of your life. If you just give yourself a detachment routine at the end of your workday, where you define the 3 things you want to do the next day so that you no longer have to think about it. You know that when you wake up, you've got your to-do list waiting for you. They're the 3 things that are important. They're not urgent. They're the 3 things that you're excited about. They're the 3 things that are towards your future self, which you're going to wake up and get yourself into a flow state and work on before the busyness of your day. Then you can just, if you want, journal a little bit about what you learned that day or about what you want to focus on tomorrow. Then you can turn your phone on airplane mode, and you don't need to have FOMO or fear that you're going to miss anything. Instead, you can just live with conscious creation. You can live with joy. You can be present. You don't have to have FOMO. You don't have to fear your way into always being on and always being alert and always being ready for that little thing. That's a scrapper mindset. That's a poverty mindset. It's a wealth mindset and an abundant mindset to turn off and know that ultimately you're the one bringing in all the opportunity towards you. You're going to be fine. Tomorrow's another day. Right now you're going to be here. Wherever you are, that's where you should be. And you don't want to waste today. You don't want to waste those precious moments with your loved ones by being only half engaged. You want to give them your full engagement. You want to be fully present. You want to be proud of who you are. That's how you build confidence. If you can detach, if you can put your phone on airplane mode, keep it away from your body, and then just allow yourself to be fully detached and basically intermittent fast from work and from tech. Then what's going to happen is you're going to sleep better, you're going to have better relationships, you're going to feel better, you're going to be happier, you're going to have more active recovery, meaning recovery that's more alive living rather than recovery where you're just consuming more and more junk media. Instead, you're going to be creating real experiences and creating real connections with the people you love. Then that will translate when you get on and into your work and into your tech. You're going to be so much more in flow, so much more successful, so much more intentional, so much more creative. So that is the invitation to you, if you're willing to. If you're willing to be rare in a world where everyone is becoming a drone plugged into the matrix, if you're willing to turn your phone on airplane mode and then design your situation, meaning you keep your phone away from your body, that's a forcing function. You leave it away from you so that it's not the default setting where you keep grabbing it because you've now created the habit, but instead it's out of sight, out of mind, and you are in full confidence mode that everything is going to be fine, and that because you're getting better as a person, because you're becoming more healthy, healed, and aware, you're going to be so much better at work the next day. And because you're better at work the next day, you're going to create better outcomes than you would have if you were plugged in and ultimately overly consumed and exhausted. And so because you're creating better outcomes the next day and more intentional and more powerful, you're ultimately creating more opportunities for yourself. And your future self keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you keep performing at higher and higher levels, and you're spending your life more and more in flow. And the more flow and engagement you have, the happier you'll be. A lot of research shows flow creates joy. Flow creates happiness. Being engaged, being fully present, being aware and connected is how you find joy. First step, allowing yourself to turn off that phone, leave it away from your body, leave the FOMO, and just be. Be with your loved ones. Do things that are not phone related and enjoy your life. It might be a stretch in today's world. It might be a stretch with your current addiction. Your body has literally become addicted to the dopamine of sucking it in, but if you leave it away from your body, it's less of a willpower thing. I love the quote from Michael Jordan, "Once I made a decision, I never thought about it again." Turning your phone on airplane mode, leaving it away from your physical body is one decision that makes the rest easier. You no longer have to think about it. That removes decision fatigue. So try it and watch what happens. And in this video, I'm going to teach you several powerful principles for how to become more creative. The first one comes from James Altucher. He wrote a book called Choose Yourself, and one of the things he taught about in that book is the idea of in the morning writing down just 10 ideas every day, 10 ideas. So if you're a writer, writing down 10 ideas for potential blog posts. If you're a musician, writing down 10 potential songs. If you're a designer, writing down 10 potential ideas. Just writing 10 ideas, because that gets you in the frame of actually just coming up with lots of ideas, and most of them are going to be really bad ideas. It's usually not the idea, but the idea after the idea, or after the idea, or after the idea. Just getting used to having ideas and then being able to scan through them and saying bad, 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 good, and then looking at that one idea maybe and turning that one idea into 5 different ideas. And so that is a powerful principle of just training your brain to be creative. Also, there's a lot of research that shows that your brain is most primed for creativity first thing in the morning. Joshua Waitzkin, the author of the book, The Art of Learning, has an idea he calls crystallized intelligence. He basically does this every night and every morning. At the end of every night, he thinks about the biggest problem he's trying to solve or the biggest question that he's trying to understand. He does that right before bed, and then he goes to bed. He doesn't look at his smartphone, and this is really important. Don't look at your smartphone before bed because you're consuming. If you have a consuming attitude and a consuming way of life, then you're not going to be creating. There's a creation way of living and there's a consumption way of living, and most people are in a state of reactive consumption. They're just consuming, scrolling. They're not being in flow. And so what Josh Waitzkin talks about is, first off, you want to have a creative mindset, but also you want to have what he calls a proactive day architecture. Proactive day architecture means you architect your day to be proactive, not to be reactive. Most people, their day is designed to be reactive. They're reactive to other people's schedules. They're reactive to other people's agendas. When they wake up, they open up their email and they're immediately bombarded by other people's agendas, and they just get used to being a ping pong ball, bounced around. So you want to be creative, but you also want to be proactive so that you're the one controlling your life, you're the one controlling your mind, you're the one controlling your brain, you're the one controlling your thoughts, and you're the one controlling your creative flow. And so there's a quote from Thomas Edison, and it relates to right before you go to bed. Thomas Edison said, never go to bed without providing a request to your subconscious. And so that's what Josh Waitzkin does. At the end of every night, he either thinks about the biggest problem he's trying to solve or the biggest question he's trying to answer. He just thinks about it, reflects on it, ponders on it, then he goes to bed. And while he's asleep, his subconscious and his brain are literally formulating and solving the equations for him. And then he wakes up first thing in the morning and he says pre-input. He doesn't just wake up and immediately start going into reactive mode where he's scrolling through other people's opinions or agendas. He keeps his phone on airplane mode, gets himself water or whatever, and he goes to an environment where he just journals. He creatively outputs. There's a great book on this from Julie Cameron called The Artist's Way. And it's just about dumping your thoughts so that your subconscious can get out on paper. And so that's where Josh Waitzkin gets his crystallized intelligence. But that's really important because your brain is hyper creative first thing in the morning. It's peaked, it's primed, your willpower is highest, your energy is really good. And so he just sketches out his ideas, his thoughts, as it relates to the question he's trying to answer, the problem he's trying to solve, or anything else going on in his life, and he's able to get subconscious breakthroughs because he's able to access his subconscious, because right in the morning, your brain's more in a slower alpha or theta state, whereas if you start speeding up your brain by looking at technology or thinking about all the things you got to do, you start speeding it up to a beta state. And when your mind's moving at a higher stress rate, you've got less access to creative flow. You've got less access to your subconscious. And so rather than speeding your brain up first thing in the morning, you want to stay in a flow state, and you want to actually just be in that place where you can think creatively. I can say that I've applied these two principles. One is going to bed thinking about what I want to do the next day. In my case, as a writer, I would think about what are the blog posts that I want to write about, and I would just start sketching some ideas, go to bed, and then I'd wake up and I'd pull out my journal and sketch more of those ideas, and my ideas would expand. And then also the James Altucher idea of just writing down 10 ideas first thing in the morning makes a lot of sense because your brain is really creative and really primed. Here's one thing about using your journal first thing in the morning and also to get subconscious or creative breakthroughs. It doesn't need to take more than 10 minutes. I actually do it right before I go into the gym. So I wake up, take some pre-workout, drink some water, drive to the gym, pull out my journal for 10 or 15 minutes, and I just write down a bunch of ideas and also things I want to accomplish that day, or things I want to write about, or things I want to do, or things I want to accomplish. And just by giving myself 10 minutes, I'm blown away by the creative inspiration and the insights I get just by giving myself that time. Your brain is an amazing tool, and your creative thought process and your creative mind is powerful if you exercise it every day. The question is, are you actually exercising your brain every single day? And are you exercising your creative muscles just like you would exercise your body in the gym? You can do that in your journal. And then obviously the next step is output, output, output. Creativity breeds more creativity. Having a less attachment to the outcome increases your creativity. And so by producing a high volume of work, there's a great video called The Gap by Ira Glass. There's a link down below to it. Highly recommend you watch this, but one of the things that Ira Glass talks about is that whenever you first start as a creative, it actually takes years of work. You start as a creative person because you've got amazing taste. Whether it be music or art or writing, you've got good taste, but there's a problem, and that's that the work you're producing isn't as good as your taste. You know it's not as good as it could be, and the problem is that most people quit before they ever get good enough. And how Ira Glass says you bridge that gap is it takes years of producing an enormous amount of work. You've got to put yourself on deadline. You've got to publish, whatever that looks like. If you're an entrepreneur, it's putting out products or it's refining your products, but publishing in public, whatever that looks like to you, and producing a huge volume of work is really how you engage in what psychologists call deliberate practice. And you've got to become very comfortable with failure. Seth Godin talks a lot about that. He says, if I fail more than you, I win. Because if you're willing to fail, and if you're comfortable with that, you can take that feedback and you can get good. Dan Sullivan would call this being in the gain versus being in the gap. When you're in the gain, you take every experience you have and you transform that into learning. All right, that blog post didn't really work, or that song didn't really work. What can I learn from that? What about it did work? Or what can I use from that to get better? If you can seek failure and if you can be comfortable with failure. My son, Caleb, actually, he's 13 years old. He plays a lot of tennis. And when we first started getting him into tournaments, he couldn't handle failure. And he was so nervous and jittery that he failed a lot. He didn't win a single match for like 5 tournaments, but the failures crushed him in the beginning. And it wasn't until he became comfortable with failure that he started actually playing well. He started getting comfortable. And so you got to get really comfortable with failure if you want to get good at winning. And then obviously you need to track in or tap into the mindset of winning. There's a great book actually called Winning by Tim Grover. Tim Grover was the performance coach of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Charles Barkley, many of the best NBA players. And there is a winning mindset. Tom Brady, as an example, has a winning mindset. He knows how to win. And winning actually is built by confidence, but winning is a mindset. And you have to get used to losing in order to win, but also you've got to get to the point where you can win. And there's a lot of people who are good at what they do, but they don't know how to win. They always fall to the level of their competition rather than actually finding a way to win. In psychology, there's a concept called psychological flexibility. Obviously an important aspect of creativity, but it's also an important aspect of winning. And that's a big aspect of flexibility is finding a pathway to winning. There's not just one pathway to winning. And people who are failures or people who are losers, they just stick with one pathway. They stick with what's comfortable to them, whereas people who are winners, they will find a way. It may be an ugly way, it may be a sloppy way, but they are so committed to winning that they will find a way. There's a book on this subject called The Third Door by Alex Banyan. He said, and he compares success to a nightclub. He says most people just go the one way. There's 2 primary doors into a nightclub. One is just the front door, and there's a huge line. There's 100 people in line. It's going to take 4 hours, and you probably won't get in. That's the primary way. The second door is the VIP door, and you're not going to get into that door because that's only for the VIPs, the famous people, the celebrities, the billionaires. What people don't tell you is, though, there's always a third door. But that third door is not an obvious door. It's not a linear pathway, and it's going to take some ingenuity. It's going to take some resourcefulness. You may have to go down a back alley, knock on a back door, go through a window, sneak in through the kitchen. But there is a way in, and the question is, are you going to find that way? Psychologists would call that pathways thinking. It's a key aspect of both motivation and of hope, and winners will find a pathway. They will find a way to win. It may not be good looking, it may not be sexy, but they find ways to win. They find ways to get support from those around them, and winning is a mindset. Getting the result you want is a mindset. It takes complete flexibility, but it takes commitment. And there's a great book on that subject called the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And one of the things that they talk about in that book is that you can know your level of commitment by the results you're getting. Whatever results you're getting, that's what you're committed to. Whatever you currently weigh, that's what you're committed to. Whatever income you have, that's what you're committed to. Whatever you're committed to is represented in the results you get. And if you want to increase your results, you got to commit to those results. And then with commitment comes courage. Dan Sullivan has a great book on this, linked down to it down below, called the 4 C's Formula. And he says the first step to any achievement is committing to what you want. And then from commitment, because you're committing to something way above and beyond your current self, you're committing to your future self. In order to make that big leap, you've got to then be courageous, because it's above your current self. It's above your current capability, your current knowledge, your situation. So you've got to be courageous. And that's really a huge aspect of creativity and art, is courage, honesty. And so through the process of being courageous and through the process of failing, and being comfortable with failing, you eventually get comfortable to the point where you can develop capability and confidence your former self didn't have, and you can produce results at a level beyond what you formerly had. Another important aspect of creativity is not being attached to your old ideas. There's a great book on this subject by Adam Grant. It's called Think Again. And he talks about how a key aspect of learning and growth is not attaching your current identity to your former identity. Your current self doesn't have to be the same person as your former self. You don't have to operate based on the same beliefs or the same ideas as your former self. Hopefully you outgrew those through education, through experience, through learning, through feedback. You don't have to think the same way your former self did. You get updates to your iPhone, you get updates to your technology, you get updates to, your car. When was the last time you updated your identity? When was the last time you updated your thinking? In psychology terms, you want to have a flexible identity. You want to have a growth mindset where you think about who's your future self. You don't want to get so tied to overly defining your identity and being stuck to your former perspectives. And so you want to actually see the distance between your current and your former self, and you don't want to be forced to apply the thinking of your former self. You want to let go of that and say, what do I want now? Brian Tracy actually has a really great concept on that called zero-based thinking. Zero-based thinking, according to Brian Tracy, is knowing what you know now. There are relationships, there are situations, there's commitments that you wouldn't get involved in. And so you gotta think, what do I know now? What are the decisions I'm gonna make based on what I know now? Because your current self is far more informed than your former self, and your future self is gonna be far more informed than your current self. So there's a few more key principles that I'm just gonna share just to finish this off as far as massively creating rapid creativity and rapid flow. And that's one of them is the 80% rule from Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan says that 80% gets results while 100% is still thinking about it. A key aspect of huge creative output is getting comfortable putting out imperfect work. Don't be so attached to your current work. Your future self will make better work than your current self. Don't be so attached to this single piece of art. I've published multiple books. I've got 3 books right here that I've published. Willpower Doesn't Work, Personality Isn't Permanent, Who Not How. And I'm not attached to any of these books. For Willpower Doesn't Work, for example, my first book that came out in 2018, current Benjamin Hardy wouldn't write that book. Not that I fundamentally disagree with it, but I wouldn't write that book today because I'm not the same person who wrote that book 3 or 4 years ago. And hopefully I'm not attached to any of my work because my future self can create better work. You don't want to be too attached to your own ideas. That's actually another thing that Adam Grant said, is he said, don't connect your opinions to your identity. Obviously you can have principles and values which are flexible, or which then lead and lend towards growth. But one of the big problems that stops people is that they're too attached to their own ideas right now, or they're too attached to their own identity right now, rather than being flexible. That's why I love the 80% rule, is because you can put out imperfect work and you're not so attached to it. You know that your future self will create better work. And you know actually that by getting feedback on your work, you can transform your thinking. Maybe you put out an idea in its raw form and you get feedback, and then you can take that feedback and say, oh, and you can redraft it, and you can keep redrafting and keep updating your ideas, keep updating your identity, keep updating your thinking. That's called learning, rather than getting so attached and then overcommitted to one way of seeing things and one way of thinking. So having that growth mindset, having that willingness to fail, having that willingness to update your identity, having that willingness to update your thinking, detaching from the thinking of your former self, not being so tied or attached to your past, and then just continually outflowing towards your future self. Using your evening and morning routine, getting that crystallized intelligence. Massive creativity, being a creator and a learner, not a consumer and a reactor. It's an amazing experience. You can create an amazing amount. You can engage in deliberate practice. You can transform yourself. You can become a master. There's another amazing book called Mastery by Robert Greene. And you can become a master at whatever you want. You can become a master at thinking, a master at writing, a master at art, a master at sports, a master at coaching. Whatever it is you want to become a master at, optimize your life for that thing. Which leads me to the last question. What is your life currently optimized for? What have you optimized yourself for right now? Is it for consumption? Is it for creativity? Is it for output? Is it for winning? Or are you just optimized for whatever life you currently have? Probably the worst thing you could do right before bed is staring at your screen. It's one of the most common things we all do, but it's really bad for your subconscious. It's bad for your memory. It's bad for your sleep. It's bad for your confidence. It's bad for having a good day the next day. There's a lot of research that shows that the last thing you do right before bed is what's coded into your long-term memory. How you do anything is how you do everything. And if you're staring at your phone reactively, just scrolling, not only does the lighting kind of amp up your brain waves, which makes it harder to go into deep REM, but you're just being reactive. You're not being thoughtful, you're not being planning, you're not being purposeful, and that's going to get coded into your long-term memory, into your subconscious while you're sleeping, and that's going to shape your habits. It's going to shape your identity. So when you wake up the next day, you're going to wake up and probably just step back into that reactivity, into that addiction. Now, there's some research that shows that specifically gratitude at the end of your day is one of the most powerful things you can do, not only for happiness, but for improved sleep. Down below are links to the actual scientific articles. Going to bed with gratitude improves your sleep. It makes you feel better because you reflect. Actually, what the research shows, there's a study that said that reflecting on 3 positive things at the end of your day, and ideally writing it down codes the memory that it was a good day. It makes you focus on the good, but also by looking for the good, you train your brain to look for more good. In psychology, we call that selective attention. You train your worldview, you train your filter of the world, and by taking time at the end of the day to just write 3 things that you're grateful for, 3 things that went well, you're actually training your brain to look for and find the good, and then you actually train yourself to want to find more and more good. Dan Sullivan, the co-founder of Strategic Coach, which is the #1 entrepreneurial coaching program in the world, he just invites his entrepreneurs to reflect on 3 wins from that day. The reason that Dan wants people to think about the 3 wins for the day is because you want to code the day as a win. You want to code the day as a win, not only because it makes you feel like you're making progress, but because it makes you want more wins. Anything you do, you actually want more of. If you look at Facebook, you're going to want to look at more Facebook. If you eat donuts, you're going to want to eat more donuts. All behavior is addictive. And so by focusing on gratitude, you actually feel peace, you feel happiness, and it also just allows your brain to just slow down and sleep better. You will sleep better if you do this. This is an invitation, it's a challenge. Try this. A few things are going to happen. So if you take just 30 minutes away from your phone before bed, 30 to 60 ideally, not only will you slow your brain down, because if you're constantly looking at your phone, your brain stays in a beta state. It stays kind of activated, which makes it harder to zone down. If you just put your phone on airplane mode, keep it away from your body, be present, be with loved ones, and at the end of the day, at some point, write down 3 things that you're grateful for, or write down 3 wins that you got that day. Just reflect on your progress that day. Here's what's automatically going to happen. Not only are you going to look back, feel grateful, feel happy, feel peaceful, feel hope, it's also going to automatically swing into the next day. That's why Dan actually has people focus on 3 wins. Because when you look at 3 wins that you got today, it actually immediately swings into the future. Well, what are the 3 wins I want to get tomorrow? That's how gratitude works. Not only do you make your past more positive, but it actually helps you focus on the right things in the future. So at the end of the day, you write down the 3 things that you are proud of that you accomplished that day, or the 3 things you're grateful for. You also then write down the 3 things you want to accomplish the next day. There's a great quote from Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great. He said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. So when you're thinking about what you want to accomplish the next day, don't have a to-do list of like 10 items. Have a to-do list of 3 things. You should focus on what's important, not on what's urgent. You should focus on things that make the biggest impact, not just being busy. A lot of people, they'll have like 10 things on their to-do list, and they're really busy, they're really frenetic, they're moving all around, but they're not actually making progress. They're on the hamster wheel. There's actually a great book. It's called The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch. And the 80-20 principle is the idea that 80% of your results come from 20% of what you do. And so if you want to be effective, if you want to be successful, rather than having 10 items on your to-do list, you actually look at those 10 items and you cut out 8 of them, 7 or 8 of them, and you just focus on the 1 to 3 that really matter. If at the end of your day, you don't use your technology. Instead, you just focus, be present, recover. There's actually a lot of research on the idea of psychological detachment from work. While you're recovering, you don't want to think about work. Actually, the more you detach from work at the end of the day and the more you detach from technology, the more flow you'll be in when you go to work. You'll also allow your brain to slow down, which will allow you to have a lot of clarity, a lot of confidence. And so at the end of your day, write 3 things you're grateful for, write as many things as you're grateful for as you want. You could also frame those as wins. And then write 3 things you want to accomplish the next day, then go to bed. Here's what it will do for you. Not only will you sleep better and will you feel good about your day, you'll wake up the next day with a purpose. And you can actually wake up and start focusing on the important things rather than the urgent things. You can start eating the frog. Eating the frog means you've put the worst first. You're actually putting your future self before your busyness. If you don't wake up and accomplish first things first, if you don't put your future self first, if you don't eat the frog, then what's going to happen is you're just going to wake up and be reactive. You're going to be busy to the situation. You're going to be busy to your work or to all the demands. But if you wake up, get yourself into a flow state, get yourself into the right environment, hydrate yourself, and rather than inputting, you actually output. You pull out your journal and you start writing about your goals. Here's the thing. Right before bed, you focused on gratitude and you wrote about the 3 things you wanted to accomplish. Well, while you were asleep, you were coding that stuff into your long-term memory and your brain was actually solving those problems. Thomas Edison, the famous inventor, said, never go to bed without a request to your subconscious. Well, writing about things you're grateful for and writing about your goals was a request to your subconscious. Writing about the things you're actually wanting to accomplish the next day. I actually know people who Right before bed, they focused on what they wanted to accomplish, and then the next morning, the problem literally solved itself. And so once you wake up, rather than inputting, you want to actually output. You want to go get in your journal and start writing. And as you do that, you will get creative breakthroughs. You'll get subconscious breakthroughs. Josh Waitzkin, the author of The Art of Learning, actually calls this crystallized intelligence. You want to get those subconscious creative breakthroughs, and you do it by outputting, by writing in your journal about your goals in the morning, and then taking action towards your future self, taking action towards the 3 things you want to accomplish. If you wake up, write in your journal, and then ultimately get straight to your future self activities, your 3 things that you wrote down, you could have those done before all the busyness of the day, and then it really doesn't matter what you have for the rest of the day. You'll have put the first things first, and you'll be moving forward. There's a great quote from Meredith Willson. Meredith Willson wrote the play The Music Man. And in that play, she said, if you wait for too many tomorrows, you'll find that you have a lot of empty yesterdays. That is true. If you don't, first off, be grateful for your day and then plan it. There's a great quote that says, never start the day until it's finished on paper. Well, you can do that in 3 minutes the night before. It takes 3 minutes, right? 3 things you're grateful for, write the 3 things you're going to accomplish the next day. So easy. But then you finished your day on paper. Then you can wake up, you can output, you can get creative breakthroughs, and then you can take action on those 3 things, 1 to 3 things. It could just be 1. But after you've knocked that out, you've put the important before the urgent. And if you put the important before the urgent, you will be increasingly confident. You'll also be making tangible progress towards your goals. Whereas most people, they wake up and they immediately get sucked back into the matrix. They look at their phone, they're reactive, they're low performing, they didn't sleep as deep because they were staring at their screen the night before, they hadn't planned out their day, and so they're not building their confidence, they're not moving towards their future self. And then they just go to work and they're low performing and out of flow. How you do anything is how you do everything. If you're not taking the time to recover from technology, from food, from work, and then taking the time to be grateful, you're missing out on high performance. High performance isn't that difficult. It's just small and simple practices. By small and simple things, amazing things come to pass. That's literally what the scripture says. By small and simple things, great things come to pass. And so this is the easiest thing you could do at the end of your day. Psychologically detach from work, detach from technology, put your phone on airplane mode, and then focus on gratitude at the end of your day. And by the way, when you wake up, focus on gratitude as soon as you wake up. BJ Fogg, the writer of the book Tiny Habits, he said, first thing you do when your feet hit the ground, say, it's going to be a good day. And then while you're writing in your journal first thing in the morning, write about things you're grateful for right in the morning. If you start your day with gratitude, you're changing your brain. You're training yourself to see the good. You're training yourself to find better and better things. You're training your selective attention. You're training yourself to be happy. End your day with gratitude. Start your day with gratitude. After you've written the 3 things you're grateful for, write 3 things you're going to do, and then start into them. Start into them the next day so that you're living your life on purpose, and you'll start to get insane momentum. That's how you end the day. My name is Benjamin Hardy. Here is the next Future Self video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Talk to you soon.